Hey, Deserving listeners, I recently took a poll on YouTube, and a lot of you answered saying you wanted me to watch Jenny and Sumit on 90 Day Fiancé the other way. So your wish is my command. Let's watch it. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. Let's watch.
You were being catfished?
I kind of was. I could see the look on your face. When he realized that he was getting real feelings for me, and he could tell that I was getting real feelings for him, he confessed to me that he was actually Sumit from India.
Okay, so that is not a great start to the relationship. From what I understand, Sumit, I'm going to try to get used to how to pronounce his name. He is catfishing Jenny in the United States, saying that he's this other fella, different pictures. And I just have to say that there's a lot of victims to that kind of behavior. Obviously, if you convince someone like Jenny, then Jenny is a victim. But the other victim I want to mention is the person that you're using the pictures of. My wife, actually, she's a model, and for whatever reason, models are chosen as possible catfish subjects, if you will. Meaning that people will steal pictures from my wife and act like they are her. And I just want to say that that's extreme. That's an invasion of someone's privacy. You're essentially, and they'll steal her name sometimes too, which is a whole other mess, which is essentially identity theft, right? And so I just want to mention that it's not just Jenny that's the victim. It's also the person. I mean, because the person that has those pictures, they don't want people out there using those pictures in that way. But anyway, so we have Sumit here who is catfishing Jenny, and then they are texting a lot. And the fact that Jenny didn't at least have some red flag here, even before the catfishing reveal, is a little concerning, that she wouldn't think, am I being catfished right now? And we've seen other people on the show before who either are extremely naive about that, which makes sense. I mean, not everyone knows all the different victimization that happens on the internet. But I think there's another aspect of the victimization of catfishing in which people, they either want to believe that it's true, and so they'll just deny any information to the contrary. I think, was it Yolanda that was kind of like that in Williams? Yolanda seemed to be like that, even though her daughter was telling her, I think you're being catfished. She would, with confirmation bias and by getting rid of any information that would, that would disconfirm her theory that it was real, she would push it away because she really wanted it to be true. And for Jenny, that might have been true as well. Jenny might have been like, well, I'm pretty sure this is catfishing, but I don't want to believe that because this makes me feel good. I think another aspect of being catfished is, for some people, they kind of know that it's fake, but it's low stakes because it's just texting. And you have a friend that you text with all day, and you're like, well, I know I'm being catfished. I don't know who that person is, really. I know it's not the pictures. But I don't know. It's just nice to have someone. It makes me feel good, and it's this little fantasy that I have, and it's low stakes because I haven't sent any money, and we're not actually involved with each other in real life. So I think sometimes that can happen. But it looks as though Jenny actually started to have feelings for him, and then he reportedly started actually having feelings for her, and then revealed who he was, which I will say is commendable, that he's like, actually, this is me. We've seen other people will catfish and try to get money out of it. So, but then you have to wonder, why would someone do that? Is it a troll? I mean, obviously there's money sometimes involved where you're trying to extract money. But I think it's just something that people do because they want attention, and they try to contact people online. They show their real picture and they don't get any attention, so they grab these other photos, and then, oh, now I'm starting to get attention. Now I'm starting to get people to respond to me. It makes them feel special, which I find to be extremely problematic for everyone involved. I mean, if you're getting your self-esteem through trickery and essentially psychopathy, I mean, that it takes a callous person to be able to do something like that. Like, I could never do that, to just fake and lie to someone. And it's one thing to send one message, another thing to ongoing for months trick someone like that. I get it. People are desperate sometimes, and maybe Sumit is like that. But let's keep that in mind in terms of what he's capable of as we move forward.
Wait, but we want to be together.
I would never do it.
I would never do it. Never be with somebody that young.
I had that opportunity many times, but I choose not to go there. Only because
I have children that age.
not gonna-
I have children that are older, like
I can't
his
imagine
age.
dating my own son.
Okay, I do not understand this point of view, that you would look at your friend Jenny, these are Jenny's friends, and Jenny is dating someone who is 30 years old. And then you yourself go, hey, I have a son who is 30. I wouldn't date my own son. What? How did we get there? How did we get to an age difference in a relationship, and now you're equating that with dating your own child? Sumit is not her child. Maybe that's another reason why people get, I think, irrationally creeped out by age differences, because usually when people are family members and there's a 30-year age gap, they are, mother and child. But somehow they can't comprehend that you can have, anyway. But you've heard me say this many times before, that research shows that age difference in relationships, like 30 years, doesn't mean anything bad. There's no bad outcome other than the fact that there's a slightly higher risk of divorce. But divorce isn't horrible. I mean, divorce happens. Most relationships are, a very high percentage of relationships, marriages end in divorce. But that doesn't mean we just say you can't do that, right? People that are the same age, there's something like a 40 to 50% chance that they're going to get divorced. Do we say that's stigmatized and that's weird and creepy? No. So the only bad outcome from a age difference is a slightly higher risk of divorce. Now, again, and I'll say this probably many, many times more because of this show will provoke me to, we equate an age difference with exploitation, which is fine. We want to avoid exploitation of a high control abusive relationship, right? Age difference does not guarantee that. And of course, no age difference in a relationship also does not guarantee there is not exploitation or high control. But people feel weird about it because it's culturally abnormal, but that we all understand that just because something is culturally abnormal, that doesn't mean it is pathological. And to equate Sumit and Jenny dating with dating your own son is, I don't understand how you make that connection.
Amazing, and a lot of people aren't going to understand this. But I just want you to know, I love you more than anything. Like, you are everything. You mean everything to me. You're my life. And I don't care if I'm this age and you're that age. You're amazing, and I love everything about you. I don't think there's anything about you I don't like.
So this is the sort of behavior and emotion that I am sometimes looking for in these couples, whether it's Mike and Natalie or other kinds of couples. I'm always thinking, where is this behavior? This is usually, especially in the beginning of a relationship, but even throughout a relationship, where you have an upwelling of feeling for someone and you express it. It can be very bonding in those instances. And with some of the couples, I'm thinking, do they love each other? Do they have those upwelling of feelings? Do they know how to communicate that? Do they know how to notice those feelings? What's going on? Are they afraid to express it? All those things. But I want to commend Jenny and Sumit for having, I didn't show all the clips, but Sumit, I think it's Sumit. I hear also Sumit or Sumit, so I'm trying to pronounce it correctly, but I think Sumit is the way everyone's pronouncing it. And they both seem to have a lot of emotion towards each other, which is a good sign. That's what you want, particularly in the beginning. And they're not afraid to express that. So I want to commend the two of them. And when we watch other couples and we don't see this, we should notice that. We should say, we don't know if they don't have it because they might have it behind closed doors. Most of their relationship happens off camera. But when you see this, then when I see this, I have much more optimism about their relationship because it shows that, one, they have those feelings, and two, they can express them.
Are going to be able to stand up to them, and they're not going to back down, and you're not going to come to me and say, I'm sorry, Jenny. You didn't fight the first time.
I didn't fight for this first time. But I feel like we get a chance to get together now, so I won't let it go.
Okay, so I didn't show all the clips, but they're running into some barriers about getting married, and Sumit or Sumit. I'm hearing both. I'm hearing he says Sumit, and sometimes she says Sumit. I'm gonna go with Sumit, but he in the past asked his parents if he could marry Jenny. They said no, and he came back to Jenny and said, "I'm sorry, I can't marry you." And now Sumit has to do this again, and Jenny is understandably worried that Sumit is going to cave and give in to his parents' wishes. And she just said, "I'm scared this is going to happen." And we see a very functional, healthy response from Sumit, who says, "You're right." He just agrees. He's like, "You're right. I did give in to my parents. You're right. I did that, but I'm not going to do it this time." And I just want to contrast that taking responsibility for other kinds of behavior we've seen from other couples on this show. So I want to commend Sumit for taking responsibility to say, "Yep, you're right." Other responses that we might imagine from other cast members or just anyone else might be to say, "You don't understand what my parents are like. They give me a lot of, they're very pressuring." Instead, and he could bring that up for sure, but the first response you should always have is just taking responsibility. You're right, 100%. I made that mistake. Then you can follow with your own explanations or context making, because usually the person communicating, the Jennies of the world, they want that establishment of like, "Do you understand what I'm saying?" And then you can provide your own explanation. So you have to have that first step, and a lot of people skip that step for various reasons. I see that in my office with couples where someone will say a complaint, and instead of acknowledging what the person is saying, the other person will just give excuses or context or say, "Well, you do that too." Instead of just the very first thing you should always say, and I will work with clients to get them to do this. I'll say, "Okay, wait. You can provide context. We can talk about those other subjects, but the very first thing you have to do is you have to acknowledge what the other person said." And this is part of that corny talk that sometimes we talk about. If healthy means being corny, then be corny. And by the way, soon, or maybe in the past, maybe in the future, we're coming out with a new merch because people asked for it where it says, "Be the corn." And I have one of those shirts. It's pretty great. There's a big corn thing. So you got to be the corn, and you got to say right from the beginning that, "Okay, you know what? I hear what you're saying. You're saying that I gave in to my parents, and that really hurt your feelings, and you're right, 100%. And then you can launch into other kinds of things. And it oftentimes so I don't know if I've ever said this before, but it's surprising that it hasn't come up. Most fights that couples get into are because of this omission, that people they skip the steps. Someone says something to them, and they kind of register it, and they kind of get it. You don't even have to agree with it, and that's what I talk with my couples about. It's like, you don't even have to agree with what the other person says, but you have to at least acknowledge what they are saying, because they're trying to tell you something, and you have to register and communicate to them that it has gone into your head. You don't even have to agree with it. At best, you can agree with it, but you don't have to. So you're in a fight with your spouse, and I don't know, you're fighting about landscaping ideas or something. And your spouse comes to you and says, "Well, I want to do this with landscaping and outside, planting flowers or something." And you're saying, "Well, I want to do this." And your spouse says, "Well, actually, it'll be better because of this reason. If we plant flowers like this, then this good thing will happen." And you don't like that idea. And instead of acknowledging what the other person says, you just launch into and this is pretty much universal to all couples, whether they're in therapy or not. Instead of acknowledging what the person says, what your spouse says, you just launch into arguments against it. You're like, "Well, that's a bad idea because of..." And this will escalate in a lot of instances just because you do not acknowledge what the other person is saying. So you say, "Well, I don't like that idea because it's dumb, and let's do it." Well, maybe of course that would be triggering to say, but you say, "Well, that idea is bad because this and that." And then the other person says, well, that idea is bad because of this and that. And then it just escalates. And all the while you're fighting about flowers, but really what's happening is you are hurt. You feel rejected. You feel belittled. You feel small in the other person's eyes. You feel disrespected. And that is what's causing you to escalate and to have a different tone and to oppose the other person. And it's triggering each other. Whereas your spouse comes to you and says, I think we should plant flowers here. And you don't agree with that. You're like, I don't like that idea. But you just, at the very beginning, you say, okay, so I'm hearing that you would like to have flowers here. And again, this is kind of corny, but it works. You say, I'm hearing you want to put flowers here and that you really like that. Is that right? Yeah, I really want to put flowers because of this and this and this. Okay, so what I'm hearing is you like flowers because of these reasons. Is that right? Yeah. And then you say, well, I don't like that idea because of these reasons. And then if the other person participates in it, that's kind of a key element of this. And the other person says, oh, okay, so you don't want to plant flowers here because of this reason. You're both disagreeing with each other. But if you take that step, it calms people down. You know, it's one thing to disagree with someone. It's another thing to disagree with someone who doesn't appear to be listening to you. It gets very frustrating, or that doesn't seem to understand what you're saying. That can be very frustrating. It can cause the the conflict to spiral upward into intensity, and just acknowledging what another person is saying. And I wish more people would do this, whether it's in public, you get into an argument with the McDonald's cashier, and a lot of times it's because people don't feel like they're being heard. People feel like they aren't being understood, and so they just start yelling as a result. Whereas if you just acknowledge, some of the best customer service people, I don't know if they're trained to do this, will say, okay, what I'm hearing you say is that you feel like we did this wrong. Is that what I'm understanding? Do I understand that right? Yes, you did this wrong. Okay, and what I'm understanding is that you would like us to refund your money. Is that what I'm hearing? Yes, that's what I'm hearing. Okay, I'm sorry we can't do that. If you do that, the chances of it escalating are far lesser, far smaller than if you just launch into saying we can't do that. Anyway, so have I talked about that before? I feel like I should have if I haven't, because this is a major element. And I'm demonstrating it in a simplistic way. It's actually much more complicated than this. When I'm in the room with a couple and I'm actually helping them communicate, it gets kind of nuanced in case-by-case basis. You can't just use a formula. You have to really understand what the other person is saying. You have to really listen. You have to be calm yourself, and you have to take the time. And another effect of communicating to the other person, you understand what they're saying, is that it registers in your head. Someone's telling you something, and you're coming up with all these arguments against it in your head. And then as soon as they stop talking, you launch into your argument. Well, what that does is you're not really listening. And some of you, I know all of you do this, but I'm guessing a lot of you have experienced that as you're talking to someone, you can tell that they're not really listening. They're just coming up with ideas to blast you back. So if you take the time and someone's talking to you and you're thinking of all the arguments against it, but then you wait a second, I have to do step one. Before I get to this, I have to do step one, which is to listen. It actually causes you to pay attention and focus on what they're saying. And when you focus on what other people are saying, you're much less likely to misunderstand and be triggered and go down roads that become, exaggerations of conflict. So those two effects is, one is it focuses you and, hopefully makes you more compassionate and understanding of what the other person says. And two, it conveys to the other person that you get them, and then they're less likely to escalate. So they just did that, which is good. They do that a lot, actually. All right, well, that does it for that episode. If you haven't become a patron of the podcast yet, you can do so now by clicking the link below. That's how we know you like what we are doing when you become a patron. But if not, no biggie. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.